An organization for high school students who study vocational agriculture. It also trains them to become responsible citizens and leaders in their communities. FFA forms part of the agricultural education program in many public schools. Both boys and girls may join the FFA. The United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare sponsors the FFA nationally. The official motto of the FFA expresses its entire program. Learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, and living to serve. In learning to do, FFA members study practical and scientific agriculture to become good farmers or prepare themselves for other careers in agriculture. In doing to learn, members work on projects from which they gain practical experience. In earning to live, the FFA members manage farms or agribusiness and enterprises that produce income. In living to serve, members develop qualities of competent leadership and responsible citizenship and work to improve their school and community. The FFA emblem has an owl, a plow, a rising sun, and a cross-section of an ear of corn. An American eagle appears above this design. Please excuse this. This was a flash off of my camera when I was trying to take a picture of it. So that has nothing to do with it, but I got the rest of it in there. The FFA emblem has an owl, plow, and a rising sun within the cross-section of an ear of corn. An American eagle, okay. The owl represents wisdom and knowledge. The plow stands for labor and tilling the soil. The rising sun symbolizes the new day that will dawn when all farmers learn to work together. The corn stands for agricultural interest that is common to all FFA members. The eagle stands for the national scope of the FFA. And the slogan of the FFA, the successful farmer of tomorrow is the future farmer of today. In 1964, Fabius Central School Yearbook, page 49 under the FFA photo, this information was provided. Future Farmers of America, or the FFA, is a national organization of boys enrolled in vocational agriculture. The FFA operates at a local, county, state, and national level. Fabius received his charter February 15, 1935, and has been active since that date. The Fabius chapter has 65 members paying state and county dues for the 1963 to 64 year. FFA members are enrolled in agriculture and agriculture mechanics, where they study and practice a wide variety of skills and management. These courses help prepare boys to work in agriculture and allied occupations. It was later on when the girls started becoming more involved. Okay, so that's it. How do I shut this off now?
Good.
Just pull the screen down? Okay. Yes, yes I am. Okay, so this next section, we are going to be, Dale, Barber, and I are going to be talking about the participation of the former boys, who are now men, who were in the FFA. And Dale is going to be talking to the people here in the audience who were part of it. And I am going to include information from what I gathered when I called some of the people up who attended FFA. And I think, Dale, would you like to start talking about what you did, what you remember?
Yeah. My name is Dale Barber, and I was in the FFA for 4 years. And it's a big thing for the boys today, because you look around and there's no education for these kids that are coming off from that are on the farms, and they're not college material.
Much better.
Is it?
Right up. You gotta eat it.
Right in front of your mouth.
No.
Right there.
All right. I see guys that I was in the FFA with. The FFA was very productive I think, in our school. They did a number of different things, and I mean, we went on trips to visit different places. We went to Detroit, we went to Canada, we went to Philadelphia, or to Pittsburgh, and we went all over. But we also learned how to earn those trips. We used to wax cars and every other thing, you know. And as a group, we used to go to different farmers, and we'd cut roads in their corn to help them out, you know. And I see guys sitting here, that Harvey Skeel for one, Jimmy, that there's a lot of us that are still around and still very involved in what we learned from Mr. Ossick. And that's another story in itself, is that man there. He touched so many people in his duration here. It's just unbelievable what those boys have done. And I think everybody knows of one or two or three that, in the successful stories that are behind him. And it's just it's a pleasure to have grown up under him, because he knows how to teach and he got the job done. And that's about what I can tell you.
Okay, so Dale and I are going to alternate back and forth. Okay, so I want to tell you about Grant Carroll, who was in the class of 1954. And I don't know if anybody remembers Grant, but he now lives in the Philippines. So Grant sent me a page and a half of information and his feelings and everything. But I thought, well,
Oh, Jimmy, you must remember that. You ready to share?
One of the projects we had was planting a lot of evergreen trees throughout the Fabius area. And over my way in what we called at the time the Dennis Farm, we planted some there to find Powerful Iron Farm. But also was trying to keep an eye on it, because a woodchuck wall we could plant it out the corner. So doing so, that was what he had in mind. We went on field trips with him, we went to auctions. He was a great teacher, and doing so.
The bridge, anybody remembers? I'm not sure. Dale, were you on that? Yeah. So we had a lot of fun on field trips.
okay, thank you, Har. Okay, I called my cousin Russell Pilcher, and he remembers starting an FFA in 1945. He thought the FFA were the ones who worked on the Victory Garden. They planted evergreen trees on Leland House Farm. He remembers a car trip to Cobleskill, and he remembered attending the FFA meetings at night after the farm chores were done. Because after they left school, they had to go home, do the farm work. That's when the boys could come back and have their classes at night for the FFA. Okay, go ahead, Dale.
Well, another thing that I remember was he started a program, and it was adult education here in Fabius with the FFA. And it was, you know, everybody, they didn't think too much about that. Well, the first night that he had it, he had 56 people that wanted, he says, what am I going to do with 56 people? All of these people had come to, because their children had been there, their brothers, you know, had been in the program, and it was just a phenomenal thing. And he's the one that instigated, I think, adult education here in the school system. And there's a lot of boys different. I see one guy back here that must be, I think he's about the oldest one in the class. That's Art Woodford.
And this is Dick Woodford.
Well, I was in Mr. Ross's class, and God bless the man, there's nothing that any writer can say about him than that. And we started out in 47, I was in there, and I noticed in the book that the ones that got the coats, they paid $6 for them. So my name is not there because I didn't have the $6 to buy the jacket. But I was in for 4 years, and we went over on Mr. Reach's Hill and planted trees. If everybody remembers that, some of us are too little to run around chasing foxholes. But we planted trees and went to Canada 2 years and England 1 year, New England, for our first field trips. And later on, they went out to Newborn, Michigan, which is beyond my time. I'm sorry I missed that one. But a lot of people came out of those classes. I guess the one that really stands out would be Kenny Hawk, and he ended up with president of Cobbleville University. And maybe there's others, but I don't know. The rest of us stayed home and did the work.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Okay, I also interviewed Royce Root, who couldn't make it tonight. He was in the FFA from 1964 to 1967. He remembers these field trips. He went to Long Island area to see a big farm. He went to Pennsylvania to see the New Holland plant tour. And he went to Michigan for the car factory. Local New Woodstock was another one for a hydraulic ram working on a farm. They wanted to go see a hydraulic ram working. And then there was, the students brought in farm tractors to be repainted, so they worked on shops around here. Okay, he said that Mr. Austin had 3 electrical boards on plywood, which he would switch around to get the students to correct. So that was his way, one of his ways of testing to make sure that they could figure the electrical unit. Royce ended up grinding valves, and he said that Art Wilds sent over tractors to be worked on, and students were graded on their work. Okay, Dale?
We hear all about the field trips and everything that we went on, but we don't hear much about how we raised the money. And if you guys remember, we waxed an awful lot of cars. I'm telling you, everybody's from the ministers to the, you name it, we waxed it, you know. That was one way that was about the only way we raised money that I remember. And other than the farmers, you know, we would overhaul tractors and stuff like that, and they would donate. And Peter, what do you remember about the FFA?
I should have a milk tester over there where the farmers could bring their milk in, and we'd test the milk and see if the milk companies were hooking us. And I remember planting all these trees around here, like down here on Keeney Crossroad there, Earl Priest got trees there, and then the guy that used to haul the garbage here, he was down on the East Keeney Road. And then Billy Richardson there, he planted trees up on his grandfather's place up next to us. We planted trees. Oh, we planted trees up on Dennis's farm, up on your place too. And I don't know, I went to Michigan to the Ford plant with him. And we went to Baltimore, Maryland. And on the way to Baltimore, Maryland, he wanted to stop to sleep. Oh no, nobody wanted to stop to sleep, so we got there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Then we couldn't find no place to eat. So we had quite a time.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. I talked to Joe Campbell during our seniors luncheon one day, and he remembers working on Mr.
There's another guy back here, Arnold Stewart. And I remember all of these guys being around, and they were ahead of me in the classes. And you got Dale Hoytman here. Arnold, give us a little road.
Well, you're talking about Mr. Hassan being one heck of a good teacher, and I probably could speak for a few of us. We should have paid a little more attention. Less horseplay, at least for me. And I remember some of the trips, one from Canada, Detroit. We had a great time. We all had a ball. And, like I said, we should have paid a little more attention. A little less horseplay.
That was a
Okay.
big thing with him.
Thank you. I talked to Stan Scott, and he said that his class was held in a separate annex of the school, He didn't take on the extra activities, but he does remember going on a field trip up in the Highland Forest. Okay, Dale?
Dale, what do you?
Probably out the bus garage talking with Harold Pollard. I was not one of Bob Osborne's favorite people, in spite of the fact that he's a distant cousin. Maybe I was. But anyway, as I was sitting here, I'm thinking about the farms that were around in those days, and it's a pretty good sized farm, but I'm sure that the skills and Baps and so the others were a lot larger. And then there were the smaller farms. I think of Art Bryan around the corner from us, and Kenny Bryan and Paul Owens, and several around, many records. It was really a great lifestyle. And that was the best thing about farming, as far as I'm concerned, was the lifestyle itself, the family being together, working together. I never cared a whole lot about farming until we got up in Fabius on a bigger farm where Dad could work with Harold and me. And I began to like it, even thinking perhaps that I'd stay with it, but then it didn't work out that way. But anyway, it's been a good life. I'm glad I was a farmer.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, I interviewed a field trip to the Ford factory in Detroit, Michigan. He said that the boys took sleeping bags. They slept outside the motel on the back lawn under a starlit night. That's his memory. Okay, Dale?
I was just, as we talked here, we had one class, and I don't know how many years he had it, but there was, I think, 4 girls that took FFA. And I don't know, but what Linda might have been one of them.
Oh, no, no.
Huh?
I didn't have time.
There was 4 of them that took it. And educational, vocational education in our country today, there isn't any. And we need it so badly. Because these kids, they have to have a job. And he taught, Mr. Assen taught vocational education, and he was just a super individual at it. And we still need it today.
Okay. Now, they went on a number of field trips. I don't know how many per year, maybe 1, if that? Okay. And I had received this picture from my classmate, and it's about a research center, but I recognized some of the people in it. Some of them were my classmates, so I figured this was probably taken in the mid-1960s. So I have this picture here that people can look at, plus over on another table, there are pictures that the FFA group out of the yearbooks that we've got. So there's quite a few pictures over there that you can take a look at. Now, Sonny Goodrich is in a nursing home down in Portland, but I went down to visit him one day and interview him. And he spent 4 years with Mr. Ossent in the FFA. He remembers planting trees in the springtime on Ink's farm. They used a pickaxe to create the hole, which would be 1 hole at a time. He remembers going to Cornell and watching where they did some surgery on cows. The class was held in the school building, and so therefore, and you learned some general welding and repair on farm machinery. Okay, Dale?
I can't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I hope so. When Bob took over the program in the 40s, it was oriented around mechanics. We didn't participate in some of the state stuff. We didn't participate in some of the national stuff. But we sure did participate with Tully, Lafayette, Casanova, and some of the other schools. And some of those things were backing up a manure spreader, a bunch of flags, learning to drive tractor at 14 and 15, and welding. He was very strong on welding. He started a program, adult welding, after school. But he was very thorough on how he taught. And it's funny, at the farm, we have to have acetylene torches, we have to have welders. We may not be the best at some of those things. They say farmers wear a lot of hats. We may be a little bit good, a bunch of them, and a lot of bit good on very few of them, but we wear a lot of hats. But Bob was thorough on teaching. When I had to show somebody how to run the torches at the farm, I can still see Bob's notes that he made us write several times. Take the feathered edge off the inner cone when you're setting that acetylene torch, or you're not going to cut very good. And somehow that stayed in my mind for all these years, and I can still see the notes. And I believe if you called Bob Osson tonight, he could probably find some of those notes in his house. I understand he keeps notes and tests from all the years back. Another thing about Bob, he trained a lot of people through those classes, and some of them went to work at Jack McNerney's when he first came to town for Marcellus. There was a statement that came back from Jack 10 years later that said if they got any more mechanics like they come from Fabius FFA class, send them over. That's how thorough Bob was. My dad and I would probably put 5 or 6 tractors through the program. We did some other ones in the adult program. They had probably 20 people that would come to that adult program in the evening. Bob went out of his way, but he was oriented around mechanics, welding, those kinds of things. But we still did our homework. Like I said, he could probably find some of the tests that we had to take. And he would test you in class. One time he lit a fire in a basket outside the school, and he come running in class. He wanted to make sure we were alert. He said, Harvey Skeel, go put out the fire that I got out of the shop, or outside the door. I never forgot that because we had just been told how to run a fire extinguisher. We'd actually been told how to wash our hands and wash them right. And those were little things that Bob did. I went out the door and grabbed the fire extinguisher and put the fire out, but I was a pretty nervous 9th grader at that time, I can tell you that. But I wanted to add how strong Bob was on his teachings.
Thank you.
Anything else in that?
Okay, Phil, did you grow up on a farm or not? That's what I thought. You want to hand the mic over to Phil, please? This is Phil Clapp.
Yeah, I'm Phil Clapp, born and raised on a farm in Pompey, and I was in FFA for 4 years, 59 to 62, I guess. And what Harvey's saying about the complexity of all of his courses, you know, he had everything broke down, electrical, and plumbing, and masonry, welding. We did a lot of repairs on tractors, I know that. We had, throughout the school year, we'd have like 8 or 10 different tractors in there, getting different work done and paint jobs and et cetera. And I imagine probably a lot of that was, you know, donated money that helped us on our trips. And I remember the planting trees.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, for volunteering that. Yes. Okay, I called Carl Alkett one day, and he remembers the separate shop area, which was near the old bus garage. And the old bus garage was over in that direction, not where it's at now. He remembers going to the Thousand Islands into Canada to visit farms to see how they operated. He remembers going up the Seaway to see it being built. He was taught how to weld and how to fix engines and how to paint tractors. I talked with Ken Alkett, and he remembers testing milk for butterfat. Farmers would bring it in, or the kids would bring it in for their parents. He studied about milking cows and field crops and welding. And he remembers a field trip to Cornell. It was during the Farm and Home Week. And he remembers visiting local farms in the Albany area and also seeing the Capitol building. I called Leon Skeel one day, and he remembers going to Little Falls on a field trip, which is near Albany, to see the farms. He remembers planting maple trees on the Alkett farm and also in Inks, a little welding there. He said that Mr. Osson had started a program when Leon was in the first year. There was a field trip to the Skeel farm, he said, and they judged cows according to the size and shape, the amount of milk each cow produced, and they tested that for butterfat. And then the last one on my list here, I talked with Pat Clancy, who also attended FFA. He was in a class for welding and mechanics, rebuilt and painted tractors, The tractor owner would donate money for the job, and that would help with financing the field trips that they took. He remembers planting trees on Joe Nider's land, which is off in that direction, and they would take a string with flag-like cloth and make the line straight, and they'd go up the hill, and that's where they knew where to plant each tree. And he remembers the Detroit trip also, going to the Ford Company. Okay, anybody want to volunteer any other information?
Not so much at FFA, and he was very efficient and all that. And but his job was 365 days a year. He didn't just teach school the 9 months. He actually had a paid job for the all summer long, and he'd come around in the summertime and make sure that we were doing what we should be doing and our projects were working and all that sort of thing. So that was part of the deal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then, one person who couldn't make it tonight, but his wife brought in, wife or mother? Or father? Sister. Okay. This is a Lambert who sent in a FFA ring that he had gotten and he had worn. So this is something.
You hear me now? You're welcome. So, all these stories I just heard tell me two things: how much things have stayed the same and how much things have changed. The stories of you guys who refused to listen in class, I have your direct descendants in my classes. All right. I understand those guys. I'm more like one of those guys. All right. Just before I get started on my agenda, I brought scrapbooks from Tully. They go way back. They go back at least 50 years. So if you guys want to look through that stuff, go ahead. And beyond those are a couple of things on the table. One is a current flyer from Camp Oswegatchie. That's been there a long time, and kids still enjoy going there. And the kids who go talk about how much fun they have and how they get to meet kids from around the state, other farm kids. And what else do I have over there? There's a flyer. We have a greenhouse in Tully, and we use it year-round. So there's a flyer there on hanging baskets. I'll get to that a little bit later. But we use a horticulture class. They're seeing these hangers. So we use the horticulture class, and we feed that into the FFA program. It's a little different now. What's different now is probably there's more kids interested in horticulture than there are in crops. In the old days, it might have been more like crops for the farms. Now we have more kids interested in horticulture. So that leads to flowers, hanging baskets, landscape architecture, those kind of interests. We also have a animal science class over there. It's basic animal science. I have a dairy farm background, so that makes it easy for me. People who have a lot of horses, we have a lot of girls who are interested in horses. I'm learning as much from them about horses as I'm teaching them. So, and by the way, even though your former ag teacher's not here, I'm sure he would say he was learning from you guys too. And who was it that said they stuck 20 trees in a woodchuck bowl? Yeah, we're teaching our grandsons. So it's a lot of fun. Kids are challenging, but they're bright, they're interested. So what I thought I would tell you about our program of activities, I just started last October, taking over for Derek Hill, who took a huge step up in terms of running the FFA. He runs the state FFA now. And so when I stepped in, it was right around just before Halloween, and he had taken the Tully kids to the national convention. So I think maybe he took 12 or 14 kids this year. And so that was a huge trip for them. It was the culmination of their 3 or 4 years of involvement in the FFA. And so then he went from there to Cornell. So I took over, and the first activity we had was a haunted house for Halloween. And you might wonder what that has to do with agriculture. I was wondering. Well, basically it was teaching the kids how to be leaders. There were like 10 different haunted parts of the haunted house, and the FFA kids and the chapter were each responsible for a different part of it. So they had to coordinate their activities, and it was a community service project. All the little kids in the community came in, and they loved it. The kids just loved it. And we also had a horse-drawn wagon rides outside. It was a little cold that night, but once again, it was community service. So part of the FFA program still focuses on community service. All right, I just want to get that out there early. So then after that, we got back to the fundraisers. You talked about how much money that it takes to run an FFA. So in the fall, we have the fruit and cheese sale, I call it. So that's a primary fundraiser. The kids did pretty well this year. And then we go right from that into, we make wreaths in the greenhouse. It's part of the horticulture program. It's kind of broad-based. So we use this as floriculture and horticulture, kind of a combination. So that was another fundraiser, and the kids actually, once again, had to learn to work together. And they had to learn to work, not just to make the wreath, but to make it good enough so that people would want to buy it. And they could be proud of what they had out there. So what was real interesting to me as a new teacher, not knowing anyone in the community, was which kids were willing to work toward a good standard. Some kids just wanted to show up and put in their time, but the other kids wouldn't let it happen. So that was a good experience. And then we went from that. We used that to fund a trip. Now they have leadership development conferences. So the first one was at the end of January for us. And once again, it's teaching these kids to look down the road a little bit. Like, you're going to need to do something when you get out of school. What is it you want to do? What are your interests? What are your talents? What are your abilities? That's called leadership development. So they do that in Syracuse. And once again, it gets kids together from all around the state, a bunch of all the FFA programs that can get there. And so the kids learn to relate with other people in that sense. From there, we go to a weekend, it's an overnight in Albany. It's a 2-day program. It's where our students get to meet our legislators, and our legislators get to meet our students. It's probably the best thing that kids can do all year in terms of getting the idea of the program out in the public eye. And I brought this, you guys this is the new FFA jacket, all right? It might look a lot like the old FFA jacket, because it is. This is just an example. Pass that around. You don't have to model it. So what was impressive there was, when we went to Albany, there were maybe 500 kids out of 4,000 that we have in the state, all going up there to meet with their legislators. And the legislators took those kids in like they're adults. They treated them with utmost respect, and they gave them the best of their attention. And when we were walking out, we met with the mayors. The mayors were also there at the same time lobbying the legislators. So all the kids had these blue jackets on. And as I was walking up the sidewalk, you could see that people's head would all turn, and they would say, and they would point, just like, oh, look, there's those guys and gals in the blue jackets. So it really is important for conveying the message that this is ag leadership development in a modern era, actually. So getting to Albany is important. Getting the message there. Several of you talked about how there's no vocational education anymore. That's almost correct. The name has changed, but we still teach kids to do things by using their hands, let's put it that way, and their minds, not just their minds. It's not all abstract learning. So that actually, you probably all heard of the Common Core, and it's kind of like a disastrous approach to education, and that it leaves out the half the people that can't learn that way. So now the pendulum is swinging back, and there's going to be more education where you're actually involved in doing projects, which is what you guys were talking about when you had the opportunity to plant trees. Oops, is this better? Okay. So you had the opportunity to do simple things like plant trees. We were planting flowers last week in the gardens around the school. Very simple but direct, hands-on. So we went from that. The next thing we do is it's a chance for the kids to give back, the older kids. It's called Ag Literacy, and it's where you take the story of agriculture to schools and second graders in all the schools, as many as we can get to. And this year, oh, that's what's over on the table. There's a book about apples. And that was the book that was read to the second graders. Every year it's a different book. So then from there we go to the speaking contest. How many of you were ever involved in a speaking contest or a parliamentary procedure? None? I know one. Yeah, just one? Which one was it?
Probably, well, if I went to college.
Oh, all right, okay. Sure. So,
It's a long time ago.
all right. So they have different kinds of speaking contests, prepared speeches, extemporaneous, and they have parliamentary procedure. A lot of those have old roots. The parliamentary procedures, so you learn how to run a meeting effectively. And so the kids, that's one of the things they do once again for leadership development. So then in our program, after that, we have a Mother's Day plant sale. It's for hanging baskets. So these plants go in the greenhouse in early March, and they have to be ready for sale on Mother's Day. So the kids actually have to focus on a project over 2 months, which is quite a battle of wills. But the kids did a good job. And we use the proceeds for fundraisers. It's amazing how expensive the programs are to run. So then we went, actually at the same time, they have a state convention. And so Tully this year has a state officer. Matt Curry was chosen to be the state sentinel, which is an honor. It's a reflection of his work ethic and his leadership development over the course of the previous, I'd say, he's 18, probably 12 of those 18 years he's been working on the farm. So that's kind of good. He's going to get to go around the state and represent this area, not just Tully. I have a lot of notes here. I refer to mine. Okay, so then someone mentioned that teaching is not just a 9-month position, and that's true. So on the way over tonight, my phone rang, and I thought it was because I was late or someone was worried because I was lost. But it was actually Cortland County Fair calling to see if I would coordinate FFA students at their birthing center. So they're going to have a special place for 2 days at the Cortland County Fair where they're bringing in cows to, and they will have induced these cows to deliver the calf for the public to observe. This is a little bit of a copycat of what's been going on at the state fair for the last few years. They have a huge birthing center up there. And I was talking to my son Patrick, he's involved in that program. He said, Dad, there's 200, they estimated 250, he didn't say 1,000. How many people do they get at the state fair? A million. 250,000 went to see that birthing center. So a quarter of the people who went to the state fair went to see the birthing center. So this is the kind of interest people have in ag. It's still alive, it's still vibrant, and yet it's modern, it's got a modern twist. They're inducing these cows, so we know they're going to catch. So we're going to take some kids down there. They don't know it yet. The meeting's tomorrow night. So they're going to get volunteered, as I like to tell my kids, they get volunteered for this. And they're going to basically be ambassadors of ag for the public. So then otherwise, we go to Empire Farm Days and compete in a welding competition and tractor driving competition. And since I have him here, Mr. Twentyman, we may want to do some tractor safety operating class in the next month or two, if you're interested in helping. Okay, good. Because they have to have that class. They have to be able to operate the tractor safely before they can practice or actually enter the contest at the Empire Farm Days. And it is backing up a trailer, much like, who was it who was talking about learning to back up a spreader? Yep. Spreader and a 4-wheel wagon. And nowadays they also have a 4-wheel drive tractor too. So. But they have to pass it. They have to take a test. I don't know if they have to pass. So we also were in the Memorial Day Parade in Tully. We had 6 kids in blue jackets, and once again, when you see these kids walking down the street, everybody knows what that is. It's the FFA. One thing that's new is a day of service. At the state convention, It's a little bit like community service, but it focuses the effort on one day. So we volunteered to help build flower boxes for Habitat for Humanity. So that was our one little role that we do, to just help make the community a little better place to live. So the other thing we're going to be looking at is going to the state fair this year to compete in contests. These career development contests are spread out throughout the year. So the winners from New York get a free trip to the national convention. So that's why there's so much interest in competing in these contests. Kids learn a lot of different skills, and they learn to get up in front of people and present without being too nervous. So that's a lot about what we do for our program of activities. It's a little bit less about tractor rebuilding and crops, and a little bit more about being involved in the society in other ways, horticulture. But if I take a second to digress from the FFA and get back to the classes we teach, it's a short list. Ag shop is first thing in the morning. So I have 8 or 10 kids in there, and one of the things they can do is focus on what they want to do most. So we have just one kid who decided he wanted to learn how to weld with a TIG welder. It's a specialty machine for welding aluminum, and it takes practice. That's the best way to explain it. It's still basic welding, it's heat, it's metals, but it takes practice. It's hard to, you can't just pick it up and do it. You have to develop a knack for it. And he is the only one of those kids who has shown any interest, but he's actually very good already. So hopefully years from now, when he gets out, those welding skills will serve him well. We also have animal science. That's where the kids just learn basic animal science. Vet tech is where we get into it a little more in detail. We were actually doing dissections. We had a heart dissection, and we had a fetal pig dissection. And you talk about those experiences those kids are always going to remember. That's one of them. When they just got to actually get into the middle of that project and take it right apart. I didn't have to worry about kids messing around in that class. I don't know why I'm looking at kids were paying attention. When they want it, when they're focused and they want to learn it, they learn it real fast. So then we went from vet tech. We also have a technology class for 8th graders. And I was explaining to someone Friday afternoon at 2:30, the kid who had been thrown out of the class the day before by the other teacher came to me and said, "Can I come in and work on my project?" And I said, "Okay." It was after school. So I went in, and I did not have to focus his attention. I did not have to direct him. He was a kid who wanted to do something with his hands and learn with his hands. So we still have those students in the school. And I love teaching them. It's just one of the things I like to do. So then we have another class, horticulture. That's pretty broad-based. That's the greenhouse, horticulture. And agricultural sciences, it's kind of a general class. It's meant to be an overview, look at all different parts of agriculture, and follow. It's a loosely constructed curriculum, so we can follow anyone's interest. One of the things we've done there is to teach kids how to convert from the standard system to the metric system. I don't think we'll ever have the metric system here in the States, but a lot of the science is you need to be able to use both. But it's fun teaching these kids, and they're from a wide variety of background. So I think it's a vibrant program. And I see we have Dan Twentyman sitting here, who was also one of the teachers of the Tele-Ag program. Didn't know if you had anything to add.
Thank you. Yes, you got to. Yeah, I'm Dan Twentyman. I taught agriculture for a little while at Tully many years ago. I would mention a couple things that we could tie in. Number one, Paul mentioned the greenhouse that is built there now, and I just wanted to mention that Nancy Lorraine Hoffman was huge in making that become a reality. It wouldn't be there without her helping get the grant to build that building. So that's very important, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about, Fabius Farmer over on Bailey Road. Another thing, Paul mentioned about the wreaths, Christmas wreaths. I remember years ago going over to Ron Luxinger's farm and bringing a group of kids, and I think that, at least in the years I know, was the first time that the students got a chance to make some wreaths over at Ron's. And that just goes to reiterate the fact that the community helps with the program, support the program. Generous people like Ron and other agribusinesses would let us do field trips to their places. So those are the things I have to add, I guess.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to turn it back to you. I didn't know if there were any questions or anything like that.
Well, I just found out that we have 2 students from the FFA down at DeRuyter. They are neighbors of Nancy Edwards. Do either of you boys want to say anything? Can you tell us what you do?
What do you like about the program?
So I like that we go outside, we're like always outside during class. We go to the greenhouse and plant stuff, and collect maple syrup, and spring.
So DeRuyter will be going with us to the National Convention. There's like 5 or 6 chapters that pool their resources and make a field trip.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll find out. Okay, so take a look at the scrapbooks and the pictures, and I'm going to dash into the kitchen and start getting the refreshments out. Oh, Nancy has something else to say.
I just, can you hear, right there? Can you hear me? Okay. I just want to say something about Bob Austin, who's 100 years old now. This year at the DeRuyter Alumni Association, he will have graduated 82 years ago, if I'm right, 1934. So what a special person that he touched all these lives, including mine. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Enjoy.